Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're zeroing in on a critical, yet honestly kind of overlooked window of opportunity in our clinical practice, how we can actively support autistic individuals with daily living skills and structure during summer break. You know, summer brings this completely unique set of environmental changes, and figuring out how to navigate them is absolutely crucial for providing neuroaffirming care. So let's just dive right in. Here's a quick look at our clinical roadmap. We're going to tackle the summer structure paradox, redefine what daily living skills actually mean, and talk about why safety has to come before skill building. Then, we'll hit some specific clinical targets and wrap up with how to build flexible summer routines. All right, Section 1, the summer structure paradox and the whole disruption of the school to summer transition. So, summer break usually brings this collective sigh of relief, right? The demands of school drop off, and we're all looking forward to just slowing down. But here is the paradox we actually see in the clinic. For a lot of autistic children, teens, and adults, this season abruptly rips away some incredibly crucial external scaffolds. Think about your own clients for a second. Suddenly, the wake-up times, the bus schedules, the ringing bells, the totally predictable class periods, they're just gone. Which really makes us ask, why do clients suddenly struggle with basic daily tasks in the summer? Well, without intentional planning, that sudden total lack of structure leads to regressions in task initiation, emotional regulation, and self-care. What everyone expects to be a super relaxing season can actually turn into a period of profound dysregulation purely because those invisible guardrails have just vanished. This is where we desperately need a paradigm shift. The traditional view often misinterprets a client struggling with a routine as having a motivation problem or maybe a compliance issue. It really weighs them down and assumes they just don't want to do it. But the neural-affirming view, it reveals something entirely different. It shows us that what we're looking at is frequently an executive functioning support need. We literally need to be the supportive hands providing the scaffolding for their brain. Imagine a teenager who just completely stops brushing their teeth in July. Are they being defiant? Or did the environmental cue of catching the 7:15 a.m. bus just disappear? Recognizing this distinction is a total game changer. It helps us move away from demanding compliance and toward offering real supportive accommodations. Moving on to Section 2, redefining daily living skills and uncovering the hidden mechanisms of independence. We really have to shift our perspective here. Daily living skills are not just annoying chores that parents want checked off a to-do list. Let's look closely at a supposedly simple task, like pouring a bowl of cereal. A client isn't just making breakfast. They are actively using planning, sequencing, organization, task initiation, and working memory. To get that bowl of cereal, you have to remember where the bowls are kept, check if you even have milk, sequence the pouring so it doesn't splash everywhere, and initiate the whole thing despite potential sensory aversions to, say, the cold air from the fridge. These are highly complex executive functioning abilities. When we look at daily living skills through this lens, we realize we're actually working on deep cognitive flexibility. So here is the absolute core takeaway. Daily living skills are mental health skills. They form the very bedrock of well-being. Research consistently shows us that a person's long-term quality of life is massively influenced by their adaptive functioning. These skills aren't just some secondary thing we tack on to our clinical goals. They are the actual supports that build emotional regulation, foster a real sense of competence, and increase independent living potential. When a client learns to manage their own laundry or independently pack a bag for the community pool, they aren't just doing household duties. They are actively building internal resilience. Section 3, safety before skill building, looking at the polyvagal-informed approach to learning. Listen, we absolutely cannot jump straight into teaching independence without addressing the state of the nervous system first. We need to talk about felt safety. From a polyvagal perspective, learning only really happens when the nervous system feels secure. If a client is in sensory overload from a sweltering summer day or feeling profound anxiety because their routine is totally gone, their nervous system shifts into survival mode, fight, flight, or freeze. And what happens then? All those executive functioning building blocks just tumble down and learning stops completely. You can't teach a drowning person how to swim, right? You have to get them into the boat first. Felt safety is that boat. I really want this specific thought from our source material to sink in. A client who appears resistant to learning a new life skill may actually be experiencing nervous system dysregulation. Before we try to teach any skill, we have to make sure the environment promotes that felt safety. If a client is avoiding a task, our first clinical reflex shouldn't be to push harder. Actually, scratch that. It should never be to push harder. It should be to ask, what is dysregulating their system right now? Regulation has to come before independence, every single time. All right,
Section 4, Clinical Targets for Summer. Let's build an actionable toolkit for real-life environments.
Believe it or not, summer is actually an ideal time for skill building because we get to practice in natural, real-world settings outside the classroom. Here are some incredibly practical areas you can target in your sessions starting tomorrow. For self-care, like those hygiene routines that notoriously slip in July, try implementing visual checklists on a smartphone instead of relying on verbal nagging. For home living stuff, like laundry, use step-by-step task analysis to break it down into bite-sized visual chunks. Community skills, like grocery shopping or taking the bus, benefit hugely from role-playing in your office before ever hitting the actual store. And for emotional regulation, like spotting stress signals before a meltdown, proactive co-regulation strategies with caregivers are absolutely key.
As we put these targets into practice, we've got to keep our eyes on the true metric for success. Success should never, ever be measured by trying to force an autistic individual to appear neurotypical. It's not about forcing an octagon into a square hole. That just causes trauma, not growth. A truly neuroaffirming approach asks, what skills will increase this specific person's quality of life and autonomy? The goal isn't achieving neurotypical perfection. No way. It's about finding the unique supports that allow for joyful, meaningful participation in their own daily lives.
And finally, Section 5, Building Flexible Summer Routines, focusing on practical applications for families.
This is where the rubber meets the road between the clinic and the home. We hear this from caregivers literally all the time. We want our child to be independent, but we're not sure where to start. As clinicians, we have to be the translators. Families desperately need practical autism-informed insight that goes way beyond just managing outward behaviors. Think about it. They are staring down 3 months of unstructured time, and honestly, they're panicking. They need to know how to structure those endless summer days to facilitate these skills naturally without turning their living room into a rigid boot camp. We can help families build what we like to call a predictable, not rigid day. The goal isn't to schedule every grueling minute that is a one-way ticket to demand avoidance. Instead, we just want to create enough of a steady heartbeat to the day to support nervous system regulation. For example, anchor the morning in gentle hygiene and daily planning to set visual expectations. Midday is usually great for household tasks or skill practice while energy is stable. Let the afternoon open wide up for flexibility, special interests, and self-directed downtime. Then bring the energy back down in the evening with family connection and consistent, sensory-friendly bedtime supports.
Let's quickly summarize the 4 core steps to guide your clinical approach this summer. First up, establish felt safety above all else, making sure that nervous system is regulated. Second, introduce predictable yet highly flexible routines that act as an anchor for the day. Third, utilize visual and environmental supports to offload those heavy executive functioning demands. And fourth, practice gradual skill building right out there in natural, real-life settings. This framework is your clinical toolkit. It empowers families to move far away from demanding blind compliance and toward providing genuine accommodations that actually work.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you plan your upcoming sessions. When you look at the goals you've set with your clients for the summer, I really want you to ask yourself, are we building true independence or simply compliance? True independence isn't about fitting into some specific neurotypical mold. It's about having the tools, the supports, and the confidence to participate in life meaningfully. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.